Hello everyone, Sir Cheddar here bringing you another video as promised. Once again, apologies for the absolutely ridiculous recording setup. I have my phone on my table looking down at my floor. I have to start somewhere, and I hope that this video will still be able to provide adequate value to some of the viewers. This week I'm going to be doing a little chat about 96 key keyboards. For those of you that don't know, 96 key keyboards are a compact layout which includes the function keys as well as 4 additional rows to the right of the 60% section. The majority of the time this is organized to have arrow keys as well as a short shift, which is a 1.75 size shift, a number pad, but it has also been done in the past with a different design which includes arrow keys and nav cluster, similar to a 10 keyless layout. The first board in front of you is this guy, which is it's actually a very interesting board. This keyboard started as a magenta colored ZZ96. The ZZ96 was a keyboard which was done in a group buy by Lunaris Dream. He is a Chinese member of the keyboard community, and he had the keyboards manufactured in China. The ZZ96 was a 96 key keyboard with a Win keyless programmable PCB. The price in the original group buy was around $275 if I'm remembering correctly, and I was actually in the very first group buy. Interestingly enough, the circuit board I received was dead on arrival, which was a bit of a buzzkill. So Lunaris sent me a replacement PCB for the keyboard. The replacement PCB was actually the V2 PCB, not the version 1 PCB. The switches which I put in were Gateron browns with milky housings, but these were actually very special Gateron browns because they were lubed by Sheraton, the owner of Originative.com, which was a super cool favor he did for me when I was living in the same area as him. He keeps the lube he uses a secret, but it is very incredible feeling. It's the thinner variant rather than a thicker one, but other than that, the rest of the information is unknown to me. So you might be wondering why this keyboard is called a ZZ96, but it's in a red scarf keyboard case, which is another 96 key keyboard. And basically, I realized that the angle on the ZZ96 wasn't comfortable for me to type on. Angled keyboards cause you to angle your wrists while you're typing, which personally gave my wrists a lot of strain, which didn't make me a big fan of them. As a general trend, you'll see the majority of my collection and interest in flat rather than angled keyboards for this reason. I contacted Lunaris and he swapped my ZZ96 key keyboard for a Red Scarf 96 case, as well as some cash. But the Red Scarf case, unfortunately, was red, which was probably my least favorite color in the entire world. I'd planned on re-anodizing it, but then I found out that Living Speed Bump had a silver one and wanted a red one, so we swapped. But once again, unfortunately, when he shipped it to me, the packaging became dislodged, and the keyboard ended up getting a very nasty gash, which you might be able to see right here. It's pretty significant, pretty noticeable, but I guess it just adds more to the story. So I actually I went to the post office and I tried to work with the insurance because the package was actually insured for $100, but it turns out that you have to give them the damaged product in order to receive the insurance money, which meant that my ZZ96 wouldn't have had a case at all if I did that. So that made absolutely no sense to me. So I ended up just having to keep it. Lunaris is a great, Living Speed Bump is a great guy though, and I don't hold it against him. Plus he said he was going to send me an artisan for my troubles. So that's cool. My trials and tribulations about this board continued because the PCB underglow, the RGB underglow which it had, actually started to die section by section, and at this point they actually don't function at all anymore. Recently though, putting this board through even more processes, I sliced the backspace stab I put in originally out and swapped it in for a split backspace, as you can see here. without desoldering the board. This was a pretty long process, which took about 45 minutes of slicing a plastic stabilizer very carefully not to damage the PCB. But in the end, I was able to do it, desolder the switch, and solder in two switches for the split backspace, which brought this keyboard to a layout which is more of my ideal style. The keycaps on this board are OG Cherry, which, of those of you who don't know, Cherry used to make very high quality double shot ABS keycaps for their keyboards. They eventually sold the molds to another company called GMK. If you find older Cherry boards, like what I do on e-waste trips and what I look for on those trips, you can take these keyboards and hopefully they'll have these high quality Cherry keycaps, and maybe if they're the right size and the right layout, you can have them fit your keyboard like I did with mine here. The artisans on this keyboard are they're pink artisans made by somebody named Katzenkinder. He's a pretty avid keyboard artisan maker, but he doesn't produce a lot of keycaps. He's very busy with real life stuff, and he only produces keycaps occasionally. But if you have followed me at all on our podcast, for example, you'll know that I'm an absolute massive fan of his. I'm probably his biggest fan, I like to think, at least. So, yeah, my only wish would be that he made more keycaps, but I'm very thankful for the ones that I do have. In conclusion, this keyboard here, this top one, which is, I guess, a ZZ96 still, has been through a lot from start to finish. It has a V1 magenta mounting plate, which you should be able to see through the lighting because the camera's angled pretty much directly above the keyboard, which actually gives it a nice little glow because the magenta is very shiny. It has a V2 ZZ96 PCB, and it has a red scarf case. But all in all, I really love the keyboard, and I wouldn't trade it for anything at all. I would keep it just like this forever. I think it's just an amazing keyboard. Has a lot of history to it now, and I love it. So the second board you see here is actually an Acrylic ZZ96 keyboard kit, which is actually also from Lunaris Stream, who sold a bunch of these on Mech Market. This, in my opinion, is probably one of the best valued keyboard kits ever sold. The price to me was $90 including shipping, and included a case and a PCB. At that price, I couldn't just buy one, so I bought three. I actually sold one to my old roommate and friend, and the second one I held on for around a year, and I finally just let it go to another user in California, because I'm trying to really keep my keyboard collection a little bit more reasonable because it's been getting pretty out of hand recently. So this keyboard does have some limitations in regards to the layout. For example, you couldn't do split backspace, and it had some options for the bottom row that you couldn't do. It did, however, have a very intelligently designed acrylic top plate. A lot of acrylic plates and metal plates, they don't allow for you to work on your stabilizers because those are actually secured underneath the plates. However, you'll find out that Win Keyless, he actually designs his acrylic top plates so that you can actually take and put on and off your stabilizers without having to desolder. For example, when I had to cut out the stabilizers of this keyboard, if I had a plate which was designed in that style, it would have saved me a lot of time and a lot of headaches. Also, stabilizers, from my experience, are some of the most inconsistent parts of keyboards, so being able to work on those easily and without having to desolder the entire board is a great asset to the keyboard. So another thing to mention about this keyboard is it has the Win Keyless Boot Mapper programmable PCB, but the biggest drawback, which was the reason why these were sold at cheap pricing, is because only the back row of LEDs work on the RGB and not the front row. The front row of 12 RGB LEDs. So the keyboard doesn't illuminate perfectly evenly. But I'm not a big person of RGB LEDs in general, and the color still looks fine, and you can still pick any RGB color you want, all whatever 12 million. So it's more than enough, I think. This one specifically has 60-gram lubed vintage blacks, which I received from Heroin BB, who is a California user who does a lot of switch testing, switch science, stuff like that. He's also one of the big sources of vintage blacks. And I guess comparing these two... Oh, and also I wanted to mention the keycaps on this keyboard. This is GMK Hyperfuse, which for those of you who caught it earlier, when Cherry sold their original molds for the keycaps, they sold it to GMK, which is the company that manufactured these keycaps. So these are actually the same quality keycaps, which are actually my favorite style keycaps, favorite plastic keycaps. Everything about them, they're perfect. They're amazing. The artisans here are, once again, Katz and Kinder, and then these are from Zazie, which is another Geek Hack user who did 2 sales and then he disappeared forever. I love these so much, and I wish I could find more, but they're very hard to find. Same as the Katz and Kinder. So, you know, they're just like a little unique style keycap that I just love, and I wish I could get more of, but I'm thankful for the ones that I do have. So if you compare these two keyboards, you can see that they're slightly different as far as one has a split backspace and one doesn't, and the bottom rows are slightly different. This one has 1.5, 1.5, 7, 1.5, 1.5, while this one has 1.25, 1.25, 1.25, 6.25, 1.5, 1.5. So that's the biggest difference. I think that's really the only difference. But overall, I would say that this is a pretty useful layout. If you only use the base layout, then you can make, and you don't use a number pad, then you could make. So actually, my video just got cut off for some reason. I'm not sure exactly why that was, but finishing my last statement, I was just talking about how whether or not you use the number pad or not, you can find some utility with those keys for macro keys if you wanted, because the keyboard is fully programmable. That was pretty much the last comment. This video was really just supposed to be a little chat about these two keyboards. I hope that some of you found it interesting and enjoyed the relatively unique story behind these keyboards. Hopefully more content to come in the future, considering it's my Christmas break from university. And if you haven't, please check out our podcast at theboardpodcast.com. For now, that's everything. TheSirCheddar's out.